Welcome to SaiyanVerse.
So Dragon Ball Daima finally dropped, and man, was it a huge deal for fans. But it also kicked off this massive debate. This was the final anime project that the legend himself, Akira Toriyama, was heavily involved with, and it's left a lot of us scratching our heads about its place in the timeline. So today, we're going to try and answer the one question that's on everybody's mind. Where does this new series actually fit? Is it canon? Right from the get-go, one thing was made crystal clear. Akira Toriyama wasn't just slapping his name on this thing. No, he was in the trenches, deeply and creatively involved with the story, the world, and all the new character designs.
And for us fans, this was just awesome news, right? It was the first new anime we'd gotten in years, and with the original creators steering the ship, the expectation was pretty simple. We were getting the next official chapter in the saga. It seemed like a sure thing. But turns out it's not quite that simple.
As more and more details started to come out, things got complicated. And that brings us right to the heart of the matter. Is Daima actually connected to the events of Dragon Ball Super, which we all know is the main current continuity for the whole franchise? Okay, so let's start with what everyone first thought, which makes total sense. For decades, the rule of thumb in the fan community has been pretty straightforward. If the original creator is heavily involved, then the story is official. It's part of the main timeline. Simple as that. And look, this wasn't just some rumor floating around. The official marketing, the press releases, they all really hammered this point home. This was being sold as a Toriyama project through and through. And the last time he was this involved in something, we got Battle of Gods, which kicked off the entire Dragon Ball Super era we're in now. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Based on everything we just said, the answer should be a simple yes. But, as we're about to find out, when you start to really look at the details, that obvious answer, it starts to fall apart. All right, time to put on our detective hats. Because when you hold Daima up against the established timeline of Dragon Ball Super, some pretty major inconsistencies, let's call them cracks, start to show up. Let's break down the biggest ones. First up, we've got the Potara fusion rules. As you can see here, Daima goes back to this old idea that Shin and Kibito were split because of something weird inside Majin Buu's body. But wait, Dragon Ball Super completely changed this rule. It explicitly stated that Potara fusion is only permanent for Supreme Kais. The manga even has Shin himself deny that Buu had anything to do with it. So yeah, Daima straight up contradicts established super lore right out of the gate. Now this next one might seem like a small detail, but trust me, it's a huge giveaway. In Daima, Shin calls Goku the strongest in the universe. But remember, this story is supposed to happen before Battle of Gods, and we know for a fact from the movies and the manga that Shin is absolutely terrified of and aware of Beerus, the god of destruction. The guy who is universes stronger than Goku at this point. It's a line that just doesn't make any sense for what these characters are supposed to know. And oh boy, this is a big one. Transformations. Daikuma gives us Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta and something that looks a whole lot like Super Saiyan 4 Goku. This is a massive problem. In Battle of Gods, Goku flat out says Super Saiyan 3 is his limit. And remember when Vegeta got super enraged fighting Beerus? He powered up like crazy, but he never went Super Saiyan 3. If he could use that form, that would have been the time to do it. These forms just don't fit where their power levels are right before Super starts.
Okay, this next point, it hits right at the heart of the entire franchise's lore. Daima introduces these Demon Realm Dragon Balls and actually calls them the originals. But Dragon Ball Super already gave us a very clear origin story. The original Wish Orbs are the ginormous, planet-sized Super Dragon Balls. The Namekians just copied those to make their smaller versions. This is a head-on collision with some really foundational world building.
So with all those contradictions, you might be thinking, but wait, what about all the evidence that it is canon? There are a few common arguments that fans bring up, but when you really look at them closely, they don't quite hold up. Let's tackle those now.
Yeah, you've definitely seen these arguments popping up online, right? People point out that the Bardock cameo uses his modern design from the Super manga. They'll mention the use of the term Universe 7, or that we see the same Supreme Kais. Some eagle-eyed fans even point to a tiny drawing in a manga volume where Mr. Popo has horns, just like in Daima. And on the surface, that looks like some pretty good evidence. But here's the thing, and this is really the key to the whole puzzle. None of those details actually lock Daima into the timeline. They just connect it to the established world. It's just like the old DBZ movies. Remember those? They used all the canon characters, all the familiar locations, but the plots were totally non-canon side stories. Using the new Bardock design is just, well, it's just using the most current art style to tell a separate story. It proves they share a setting, not a timeline.
So, if it's not a direct sequel, and it's filled with all these contradictions, what the heck is it? Well, I think the answer, believe it or not, comes from looking at a different massive anime franchise. And that brings us to what I like to call the One Piece movie theory, which actually solves this whole mess pretty neatly.
Okay, so here's how this works. It's pretty clever. With a bunch of the One Piece movies, the creator, Ichiura Oda, gets involved. Now, he doesn't make the movie's plot part of the main story, but he uses the movie as a way to drop in official, canon information about the world, like a character's true backstory, a new location, or a bit of history. So the movie itself isn't canon, but the lore inside it is. And I'm convinced that's exactly what's going on with Daima.
And get this, we actually have some solid proof that this is already happening. Years before Daima was even a thing, the Dragon Ball Super manga mentioned that Namekians originally came from another realm entirely. This was obviously an idea Toriyama was cooking up for Daima that he also passed along to the manga artist. So you see, the lore is already crossing over, even if the plots themselves don't line up.
All right, so after digging through all the evidence, the contradictions, the theories, what's the final verdict? Where does Dragon Ball Daima really stand in the grand scheme of things?
The absolute best way to think about Daima is with this idea. Let's call it lore canon. The story itself, Goku and the gang getting turned into kids and going on this adventure, that probably doesn't happen in the main Dragon Ball Super timeline. But the world-building details we learn inside that story, like how the Demon Realm works or the true origins of the Namekians, that stuff is official, thanks to Toriyama's direct involvement.
So, here's the bottom line. You should go and enjoy Dragon Ball Daima for what it is, a really fun, separate adventure. We don't need to try and cram its plot into the already crowded space between the Buu Saga and Battle of Gods. But the new information we learn about the Dragon Ball universe itself, yeah, that is very likely the real deal, and it could have some huge consequences for the main story down the road.
And that really leaves us with a much more interesting question to chew on, doesn't it? Instead of asking, is Daima canon, maybe we should be watching it with a new perspective. Maybe the real question we should be asking is, which of these awesome new ideas about the demon realm, magic, and the universe's history are going to be the next big thing to show up in the main Dragon Ball story? Now that's the real mystery to solve.
Subscribe and power up with SaiyanVerse.